have got my onions pretty much caramelized, and Will's working on his roux, and I'm going to make a soup. And how I did my onions was I put a little bit of olive oil in this pot and the onions, and that's how I'm cooking them. So there you go with that. And they are about done. And I'm going to put this entire 48-ounce box of chicken broth into my pot, because I am going to make a low country boil soup.
Now, on the other hand, for you, I actually did make my own shrimp stock that we're going to use here in a little bit.
Smart.
So yeah, when you're cooking this, make sure you watch out, because they don't call this stuff Cajun napalm for nothing. It'll sneak up and hit you, and you won't be able to get the fire off, I promise you. A brick roux is basically what it sounds like. It comes out to the color of bricks. But the darker you get the roux, the less thickening power it has. For this recipe, we're going to put we put 4 tablespoons of oil and 4 tablespoons of flour. And like I said, you want equal parts, and it's supposed to be about weight.
Looking good.
It is looking good. You got a little bit past peanut butter right there. And one thing to keep in mind is once it starts to turn, it goes very fast. So in the first part, you don't have to stir it as much, you don't have to watch it as much. But when it gets to this point, you have to stay on top of it or it'll burn.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little bit of pepper, about a teaspoon of pepper, in my soup. And if this soup looks familiar to you, you're right. A little bit of salt and pepper. I'm going to put a little bit of crushed pepper in it. And I put my crushed pepper in my pepper mill, so.
That's a great idea.
What? Oh, that's a good idea?
Yeah, that is a great idea. I've actually never thought about that.
Okay, now I've got my leftover potatoes, and I'm going to, let's say these are about 7 or 8 red potatoes that I want to put in. Now I have my shrimp and sausage.
And those were left over from your low country boil you said yesterday?
Yes.
All right.
No, the day before yesterday. Yesterday. Nice. A little grease on the burner, you know?
Just all the smells.
And this is going to cook down. So I want it to lose some of its water. So I'll let it
we're at
almost boil. You ready for your brick?
Yeah. All right, guys, this is the color I was talking about. This is the brick red color. And this is when you want to go ahead and add your vegetables, your aromatics. And this is actually called the Trinity because it has onions, celery, and bell peppers. Onions, the ratio here is onions, 2 parts onions, 1 part celery, 1 part bell pepper. And this is actually, in everything that I do in cooking, this is actually my 100% favorite smell that I've ever smelled in my life. And it's when you add these aromatics to the dish. Tyson, can you smell that?
I do.
We do actually want to add a little bit of salt here. In going through, I don't ever mention any salt and how much salt I put in this recipe. It kind of really just depends on everything that you add, and you know, if you use your homemade chicken stock and if there was salt in that. And so really salt is just a taste in this. You kind of have to taste it as it goes, and make sure you taste it as you add things, because when you add salt to dishes, you don't need to just add it in the end, because the flavors build upon each other, and you really need to give the salt time to I guess work its magic on the flavors. You don't have to be as careful anymore, because the moisture coming out of the vegetables really keep the roux at bay and don't let it burn after this point. Another thing about this actual dish is you need to fine dice your vegetables that you put in here, because of the fact that you don't really want them to be seen in the final dish, you kind of just want them to cook them long enough to where they actually just basically melt into the Creole. And those vegetables were about it was about 1 cup of sweet Vidalia onions. It was a half a cup of celery and a half a cup of bell pepper that was actually grown in my backyard. At this point, I'm gonna toss in my 2 tablespoons or 2 cloves of garlic. And the reason I put them in there earlier is because I didn't want them to burn. When garlic burns, it actually becomes bitter, and the flavor is just not what you want. So we're gonna toss that in there, give the garlic a little time. We're actually gonna take our spices, and we actually have a perfect 7 here, because in Cajun cooking, 7 spices is exactly what you need, and it's for luck. We have white pepper, red pepper, black pepper, we have thyme, oregano, and basil, and then 2 bay leaves. And that was a half a teaspoon of each. At this point, we're going to add a half a can of tomato paste. And this is actually a very important process in this, because we're going to do what's called pincing. And pincing, as we were talking about with the toasted spices, is kind of caramelizing the tomato paste to a point where it brings out the flavors. Tomato paste has a very acidic flavor in the beginning. So when we pinch it, we're bringing out the sugars in it and bringing out a depth of flavor that you don't get unless you do this. This is going to go for probably about 3 minutes. I made homemade shrimp stock earlier, and this is actually 2 cups of shrimp stock that we're going to add to this. And our other liquid that we're going to add is 1 cup of white wine. I use a Chardonnay. And we're going to add 1 can of stewed tomatoes. Bring this up to a boil, and then when it comes to a boil, we're going to bring it back down to maybe a little bit over or a little bit under a medium low, and cook it for about 45 minutes. Some people actually call this shrimp and red gravy, and instead of shrimp Creole. And it's because of the consistency that we're going to have after this, is we're going to bring it up to a gravy consistency and pour it over our rice. Now, one thing we haven't done yet while we're bringing it up to a boil, I'm going to dice our sausage up, our pound of sausage.
So Will convinced me that I needed a bigger pot, and he's right. So in goes my soup. And so we don't really have a lot more to do here. This just needs to cook down, and I need to put some cream in it.
How much cream are you adding?
I'm adding, this is a half pint, and I'm going to add the whole half pint. And I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of chopped garlic that's dried. Not a lot, because I honestly just don't want all those pieces of garlic in it.
Right.
Just a few. You won't notice, but you'll notice the taste. And then last but not least, I'm going to put in kale.
Kale's kind of a new thing, isn't it? People are only just now starting to get interested in kale.
I love kale. I've always liked it. The way you can cook with it, it cooks similarly to any other greens, like a mustard green or a collard green, but it doesn't have that
break
taste.
down. I feel like it doesn't break down as much.
It stays hearty, yeah. What are your 2 more additions?
Like I said, I'm using some sausages from my hometown. It's a place called Strickland's, and this is actually their mild smoke.
So am I to assume now that this is an Ellis versus Strickland?
Strickland's?
Yeah, Strickland's. Is it Strickland's?
Strickland's. I want to bring it up back to a boil again. When I added this sausage, I actually added it a little late.
And where is Strickland's?
Strickland's in Cordell, Georgia. I actually started out in
Cordell. No, we like Cordell.
Strickland's is in Cordell, Georgia. They actually have, I believe they have a place in Athens, a place in Moultrie. I'm not exactly sure. You have to check their website on stuff like that. But they started in a town called Warwick, which is actually right down the road. I grew up on Lake Blackshear, and Warwick was very close down the road to me. Now, is Ellis's sausage smoked, or is it fresh sausage?
Well, they have, it's all...
Which one did you use?
I use their smoked sausage.
Okay, about a 2 on this stove. And I want to let that sit there for about 30 minutes. And Tyson, how long is yours going to cook for?
About 30 minutes.
All right. So
It just needs to simmer for about 30 minutes.
mine just needs to cook down. What we really want to happen is we want these tomatoes to break down.
So this recipe is actually going to be on Low Country Cooking, which is your food blog. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I actually have a food blog. It's called Low Country Cooking without the G on the end. .blogspot.com. Now a lot of people ask, you know, what's the difference between Cajun and Creole? And Cajun is actually, it's backwoods. It's kind of like down home country cooking. It's more rustic. If you think about like rustic Italian dishes. Kind of like this one. This one's, you know, rustic. It's large chopped. And Creole, like this is more of a rustic Italian dish. All right, for this we're going to actually add 2 cups of rice, and we have 3 cups of water in here. And here's our second cup of rice. Plop my lid on, and then I turn it all the way down to low. And you do not open this again. Do not open it again. And just take it to low and do not mess with it, and it will not stick, I promise you, as long as you have on your lowest setting, which is like what Tyson said, just turning it off basically, because normally with the pots that you have enough residual heat. And what we're doing here is we're going to slice our shrimp, and we're going to cut them in half long ways like this. The reason I'm doing this is because I feel like it gives a nice presentation to the dish, and when these shrimp cook up, they're going to cook up in curlicues. It's kind of a nice presentation, and it gives the dish a better feel to me because of the fact that every time you take a bite, it's a bite of shrimp instead of taking you know, a whole shrimp, and you know, maybe you don't want to eat that whole shrimp. You just want kind of a bite-sized piece. And I'm actually using a fillet knife that my mom brought me from Finland, and it was actually handmade in Finland. It actually has a insignia here of where a man carved his name into it. It's pretty interesting though, but I wanted to make sure that I told my mom that, you know, I love her and I'm still using her knife. Appreciate the gift, Mom. I want to go ahead and take these bay leaves out. That's a main point. No one wants to eat a bay leaf.
No, that's not something you want to munch down on.
You kind of have to just fish them out at the end. And right now we're going to go ahead and toss our shrimp in. And these only take seriously about 3 minutes to cook up, and really nice. Really, you can have them in here and just, you know, we're about to actually cut our heat off. Let them cook up and get our dish ready. We're going to get our rice into our dishes and get everything ready. Okay, and guys, right when you add your shrimp, you want to go ahead and add your Worcestershire sauce. That was 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Take a lemon. We're going to take 1/2 of a lemon. Squeeze about 1/2 of a lemon in there. Make sure you don't get seeds in there, because that's not anything you want to eat.
That's classic combination, seafood and lemon.
That adds a nice bright flavor. And like I said, you know, we didn't want to add this in the beginning because of the fact that the flavors actually they would break down too much, and that's not what we want. Now again, guys, we've been tasting this throughout, and you know, we've been wondering about salt in there, and we've been tasting throughout, and now we kind of have our final thing. I've added salt accordingly as with each addition of things that I was adding. That's exactly what I'm thinking. And that's pretty good.
I think both of our stuff needs nothing.
I think that's amazing.
What we put in it.
We did well.
I know we did well. I'm kind of impressed with myself. I'm not impressed with you because I know you know how to cook. So. And I thought, well, I talked to Becky, and her mom's recipes seem like, some of them seem like great tailgating foods, especially the soup and the casserole. We have to start the soup first because it takes the longest to make. And so I'm going to make Miss Horn's crab stew.
Anytime Daddy, I mean, he had a cookout at least twice a week, and he had a lot of men in town, and he always had saltwater fish, because every time they went to North Carolina, they'd bring back coolers full of fish. And the same way, he'd go to the coast with friends, and they would fish down at Colonel's Island, Yellow Bluff, and go to the beach, and we'd go crabbing down there. And then Tommy's sister lived at Shellman's Bluff, So her and her husband, they had boats, and we'd go there. And then in summers, Tommy said he used to work D-head shrimp when he was in high school, he and Tommy Powell.
I got the Melba toast because the other recipe that Miss Horn that we're cooking that was I got the Melba toast. We make sure you shot that damn Melba toast.
The thing, flip it over, flip it around.
Yeah, it's upside down.
Hey!
I got it.
Point to them when you're talking about them.
Okay. The recipe calls for a stick of butter, and this is a block of butter, and it's gonna get smoky. It's a lot. After the butter has melted, Miss Horn would put in either cream of celery soup or fresh celery that she had diced very, very finely. And I know that when she made this recipe, created this recipe, it was before they really would have had food processors. So because we have a food processor, I'm not going to spend all my time chopping the celery up into teeny tiny little dice things. I want to do it in the food processor and let it saute in the butter. And that was 6 celery sticks that I had cut the top and bottoms off of. I'm going to let the celery saute in the butter for probably 7 to 10 minutes, and it's on medium on my stove. And I want it to cook long enough that the liquid comes out of the celery, that there's only butter left, and that all of the liquid that was originally in the celery has left, because I want the celery to be the thickening agent. That's why she would have used the cream of celery soup. So the celery's browning in the butter, and it's going to take about 7 to 10 minutes for that to finish. So we'll go to break and we'll come back because I want Jatia and Haley to show us how to make a Reese's pie. Is that right? A Reese's pie?
Yeah.
They say it's going to be good.
It should be chocolate sauce.
Listen, it's Reese's. Reese's peanut butter cups, I'm down.
I would peanut butter, that's all.
I'm down.
Mama was a wonderful cook, and we had so much seafood, so she was really a good cook when it came to seafood, and especially like her crab, devil crab casserole. It was better than Ms. Williams' back in when Ms. Williams was at its peak. A lot of times she would put it, we'd save the crab shell, wash them and bleach them, and then she'd stuff it back in the. But you never pack crab meat whenever you're making a crab casserole or devil crab. You never pack it because it makes it heavy. You put it in lightly, and of course her recipe is in so many of the cookbooks, and a lot of people have it. And then her crab stew was the same way. I mean, it was just loaded with crab meat and from scratch. Something nobody had heard of when we moved to Statesboro, and Daddy was cooking out so much in his kitchen for the men. And anytime we'd have a seafood supper, we'd have, you take live crab and you take an ice pick and stick in the back to kill them because they have to be fresh. They can't be boiled first. And you take the legs off and the claws, and then take the inside out, the shell off and the inside, and wash. So all you've got is the 2 white bodies, the devil's fingers off, and wash them good, and then salt and pepper them, and make up a thick pancake batter. Dip them down in that, and then drop them in hot 350 to 375 cooking oil, and it doesn't take 2 minutes. When they float, they're good and brown, you take them up and break them, and the meat just leaves the shell. So, I mean, nobody had done that kind of thing until Daddy, you know, they did it in North Carolina. They did it in Florida. So it's so much easier to eat than it is boiled. You know, boiled, you got to work at it. But I can sit at it all day.
Hi, I'm Haley Kettner.
And I'm Jatia Owens, and today we're making a chocolate Reese's pie, which is a great tailgate food for any party.
Super delicious and super easy. Okay, first we're gonna show you guys the ingredients. First we're gonna use 1 tub of whipped cream, a pack of Reese's peanut butter cups,
2 packets of instant pudding, and 2 cups of milk.
and an Oreo pie crust, chocolate pie crust.
And that's all it is?
Mm-hmm. It's easy. All right, first thing we're gonna do is add the 2 packets of chocolate pudding mix into the bowl. Jatia's got one, I got the other. All right. Okay, once that's added, make sure you have a whisk, a big bowl. We're gonna add 2 cups of milk.
Make sure the milk is cold.
Yeah, definitely make sure the milk is cold.
And you're gonna mix all the ingredients together with a whisk so it's nice and creamy.
Get all of that chocolate mixed in. No clumps.
So next we're gonna add half of the whipped topping.
Just scoop half of it in as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. All right, next we're gonna add 6 Reese's cups into a bowl, and we're gonna chop them up really fine. This is probably the best part of the recipe.
Definitely.
Love me some Reese's.
Chocolate.
Exactly. Chocolate lover's dream right here. Okay.
Now we have our Reese's all chopped up. We're gonna add them to the bowl and stir them in.
Okay. Got it all mixed in. All right, next step we're gonna do is add the mixture into the pie crust.
You can use whatever pie crust you want. We decided on chocolate. You can use Oreo or any other type.
A little heavy.
It's a lot of chocolate.
As much in there as you possibly can. Can't waste chocolate around here. Okay.
Okay, and you just take a spoon and you just smooth it all out. Okay, after you get the whipped cream all spread out, you're gonna add the last remaining of the candy on the pie.
All right, and there you have it. Reese's Hershey pie.
And you just pop it in the fridge for about 20 minutes, let it cool down some, and it'll be ready to eat.
And now that Jatia and Haley have gotten the pie done, my celery has cooked down, and I'm gonna put a couple of tablespoons of both salt and pepper in this, and you're gonna understand why there's so much in it. This is the simplest soup, which at first I thought, that can't be it, and then I thought, well, that's what restaurants do. They make the most simple things they possibly can because they have to get them out quick, but the most simple things are the best. And it said I could use either whole or 2%, and I'm using a gallon of whole. And to be healthy, I got 2% milk, so I'm going to use a half a gallon of 2% milk. All right, and now a pound of crab meat. And I'm gonna make a mess. I got saltines. I got saltines because that's exactly what she called for, and I'm doing these recipes exactly as she said do them, and I wanted to do a couple of different things to them, but I know that they're perfect the way they are. And so I got saltines, but I also got, first I got some oyster crackers because my grandmother cooked a oyster stew that was much like this, so I wanted to get those in case somebody wanted those. But finally, I got Melba toast. I got Melba toast because there's another recipe that she had that calls for something called Holland toast. And I felt like that might be something in a can, but I wasn't real sure, and I didn't think that maybe it was still around. So it sounded like it could be like Melba toast, so I got Melba toast. And would you know, in Statesboro, Georgia, I found Holland toast. So I've got the recipe exactly like she makes it for the deviled crab casserole, and we'll do that when we get back.
We'd go turtle egging, which was not the big thing, but I mean, we'd get beach rippies when we were teenagers, and that was our excitement. We'd get beach rippies and could follow the turtles, and they'd go lay eggs, and the boys would get them, and they ate them. And then take them home to Mama to cook for maybe beautiful cakes.
Really?
And they'd scramble them on the beach. You know, they're soft skinned, round, and you'd have 100 or 200 eggs in the. And then we'd go back in a few weeks, and what they weren't got, the little ones that had to stop, and you'd see them running to the water.
All the new laws.
Yeah, and there weren't any if it was. When we lived in Florida, when Cora was just a little toddler, Daddy taught her how to find clams in the muck. At low tide, you look for a keyhole, and it's just like a keyhole, the old keyhole. And you stick your finger down, and every time you'll come up with a clam. I mean, they'd be from that to this. And we've come out with bushel baskets of them.
I'm doubling this recipe. It's supposed to have a pound of lump crab meat. I have 2 pounds of it. And I'm going to double all the other measurements. I'm going to put her original recipe on so you can see it. I'm going to put in a half of a teaspoon of mustard. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, you can say that, and parsley. I'm going to put in a whole teaspoon of baking powder. I'm going to salt and pepper it to taste. I'm going to put in a whole cup of milk. I'm going to put in a half of a cup of tomato sauce. I'm also going to put in 8 pieces of the Holland bread. I love my Ninja. And that's how you do the Ninja. A whole bell pepper and an entire tablespoon of diced onion. The last thing are the eggs, the diced eggs, and I did those in my Ninja. And there go the eggs. I'm gonna put in a whole stick of butter that's softened or melted.
So I'll see you later, Mario. See you later, Mario.
Okay, there you go. It goes in the oven.
And then when the tide was coming in, we'd go floundering, and we gigged for flounder at night. And we'd get in the boat and go along the edge, or either you walk, and they bed down in the sand, the flounder. And so you look, because you can't see the fish, but you see the shape of the flounder. And you'd gig them, but you'd walk with a light, or either in the boat you'd have one of those white lights, the Coleman lights with the mantles. And we'd walk along and gig. And I know the first time Tommy, he went to Florida with us after we got married, and we went floundering walking, and we were walking right in the edge of the water, and he stepped on a big flounder, and it shot out from under him. He thought Jaws had him.
It's been about 2 hours, and I've got the devil crab casserole, that's finished, and then our mussels. And all I did with the mussels was I put them in a pot. I usually put white wine over them, but I didn't have white wine tonight, so I put a little bit of water in it, butter, salt, and pepper. I know I drank the white wine, I'm sorry. And so I put water, butter, salt, and pepper in it. But typically, it would be white wine in it, and white wine is great in it. It's very simple, and it is very good, and my child loves mussels. Anyway, all this was super easy to make. It was a little process, but that's what you do when you tailgate. You cook in a process, because tailgating takes a few hours, you know, and there's other things that go along with it. So
And
anyway,
sometimes you drink a little wine.
sometimes you do.
You know, they'd put out crab baskets, and we'd all empty the crab baskets, or else we'd crab off the docks. And there we were cooking. We cooked every night. So, I mean, it was just always cooking around.
This program is brought to you by Statesboro Natural Gas.